और आगे बढ़ते हैं और मेडिटेशन करेंगे और उसके बाद फिर हम राम जी को सुनेंगे।
सुप्रभात। पिछले कई दिनों से हम अपने हायर सेल्फ के बारे में बात कर रहे हैं। And yesterday Ram spoke at length about the higher self. So today, through this meditation, let us connect to our higher self and experience that being which is above the humanness that we experience on a day-to-day basis in multiple situations in our lives. I sit comfortably and close my eyes if I wish, relaxing all the muscles in and around my eyes. I place my palms facing up in my lap in a receiving position. I keep my spine straight. A light beam rises up from my tailbone, aligning my tailbone, spine, neck, the third eye, and top of the head. I breathe deeply, finding the inner quiet. If there are thoughts, I let them float away. Breathing deeply and slowly, I relax my face, my forehead, and I smile. I now allow a wave of gratitude to rise within me. Gratitude to have eyes to see. Gratitude to have ears to hear. Hands to touch. Heart to feel. I breathe deeply into the sense of gratitude. Heart radiating appreciation to be alive. I breathe into the appreciation of my physical self, the love that I feel for myself, the unconditional love I feel for the others. I breathe into the willingness of finding my inner peace, truly forgiving, liberating myself from sufferings. I inhale, I smile, I open my mouth a little and exhale, feeling calm and relaxed, letting go of any tension residing in my body. I surrender my ego self and I welcome my higher self, my true nature to be with me. And as I do so, I feel relaxed, fluid, and truly free. I now visualize the divine fire in my stomach. I breathe in and out, feeding the embers in my stomach. With every breath, the fire ignites brighter and luminous and illuminates my inner being. I bring my palms to my chest. On the inhale, I inhale unconditional love, happiness, compassion. And on the exhale, I exhale unconditional love, happiness, compassion, oneness of the universe. I now project my smiling heart to the planet and onto the cosmos. Eyes closed, I look up at my third eye, which is situated between my eyebrows. I breathe deeply and align my heart to my third eye. They work together in divine partnership to help me access my higher self. I breathe deeply and greet my third eye. I feel a response which is personal and unique to me. I observe the sensations in my body. I inhale and say, I am powerful, loving, and wise. And on the exhale, I say, I am calmer, lighter, relaxed. I inhale and say, I am powerful, I am loving, I am wise. I exhale and I say, I am calmer, I am lighter, I am relaxed. My heart is glowing brighter. My aura is becoming bigger, glittering. With your palms against your heart, connect now to what you wish to project on the planet, aligning your heart to the third eye. And now you may ask the Creator what you wish to ask. The Divine, the Krishna, the universe awaits your question. Put up the question that you seek an answer to. In this moment, receive your answers. I take a few deep breaths with my heart. I now express my gratitude to the universe for the gifts that are in the making for me, for all the benevolence that I have received all through my life, and for the joy I feel in my heart. I breathe deeply. The warm breath ignites the fire within me, my passion and love. It illuminates my inner being and radiates out into the world. I am whole and complete. I am perfect as I am. I am exactly where I should be. I am whole and complete. I am perfect as I am. I am exactly where I should be. I inhale and say, I am love. On the exhale, I say, I am loved. On the inhale, I say, I am whole. On the exhale, I say, I am complete. Inhale, I am a part of the universe. And on the exhale, I am one with the universe. Keep breathing and dissolve into the universe. Your whole being is filled with stars of the cosmos. Your heart is generating a powerful electromagnetic field. You illuminate everything around you. It is now time to bring myself back from the infinite space and bring my awareness to my body, letting go of images, if any. I take the state of mind and heart with me throughout the day, illuminating the world with all the love that I hold in my heart and the smile that I have on my face. I rub my palms, put them on my eyes. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Coming back to the here and now with the blessings of the divine to help me through the day and the days to come ahead. Welcome back.
Thank you, Swati, for that divine experience. I think we're singularly blessed that we have got doing this every day, and I hope all of you are experiencing this divinity within that that Swati is taking us through. So, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Let's invoke the blessings of Sri Krishna as we begin this journey of ours today. Namaskaram, Namaskara, Namaskar, Shubhodaya, good morning. Welcome everybody to this session on the Bhagavad Gita, which if you recall, we are looking at it from the perspective of Swadharma, the key to happiness. And so we continue with our exploration. 10 chapters are over. We're now on the 11th chapter. And I must say that this is really the blessings of Krishna that we've reached to this particular chapter. This is one of the most important chapters in the Gita. And the reason why this chapter is so very important and crucial is that in this chapter, Krishna, to Arjuna and through Arjuna to all of us, reveals his TV serial Mahabharat would have seen for the first time on television, the massive rendering of the Vishwarupa Darshanam of the Lord. And if you kind of recall that particular image of the Lord, then you will realize what we're talking about. But this chapter actually is a very interesting chapter because, he keeps moving on. Okay, Krishna keeps moving on from one stage to the other, and this chapter is can be interpreted in very many different ways. There are these two principal players in the Bhagavad Gita. One is Sri Krishna and the other is Arjuna. But we also get to see something interesting in this chapter. We get to see Sanjaya, who's the minister in Dhritarashtra's court. Sanjaya, who is wired in such a way that he can only see the truth and he can only tell the truth. He is not somebody who can hide anything, and he is somebody who tells it. So we're going to go through all of these very interesting aspects and figure out how this links so beautifully with our Swadharma and our higher purpose in life, and we do. So this chapter begins with Arjuna's comment. In the last chapter, Krishna actually talks of the many manifestations of the Supreme Lord, and if you recall those beautiful different manifestations, saying that I am Vishnu, I am Dhananjaya, and he gives us so many different aspects of the kind of person that he actually is. And then when he does all of that, he kind of educates us as to who we are, and how are we, how we can actually see the divine manifestations of Sri Krishna in everything around us. Okay, so that is the interesting. That's the interesting part. So Arjuna starts off, and as I told you, from chapter 1 to chapter 10, there is a complete change in Arjuna, and that conditioning thought override process that Krishna begins with in chapter 2 to Arjuna is almost complete in chapter 10. So Arjuna begins this chapter in a very interesting way. He turns and he tells Krishna, he says, "Oh Lord, my delusion and my ignorance has been overcome because you have shared the supreme secret, this knowledge, this Jnana with me in the last few chapters, and I'm completely, my delusion, my ignorance has completely been overcome, Krishna. I am now done. Okay? I've heard from you about how all beings come at the beginning of a yuga and how they get dissolved at the beginning of a yuga. I've heard you explain to me in great length about death, about the fact that death will happen at some point of time, death can happen. You explained that also to me, and I've understood that. But there is this innate curiosity in Arjuna, and he says, it's interesting. You've told me about so many things about you, that you're the taste of water, you're the smell of the earth. Then you've said that you are the one who actually gives me all those different attitudes in life. Then, of course, you went on to explain all the details of your very many different manifestations. So I am now curious to see you. Can you please show me your form? So this is a very interesting, there's a very interesting turn in this whole thing, saying, I completely am your devotee now. I'm your bhakta, I'm your devotee. I am now totally with you, Krishna. Okay, all my doubts are dispelled, all my ignorance is gone. I'm so delighted. But there is this curiosity in me, that little more, saying, "Yaar, aur kuch to bata dena, please. Can you show me? Can you show me your divine form?" So we pick up this discourse today with verse number 3. Srini, if you can play that for us, please. Is she there? Anurag? There is he dropped out.
Anurag?
हाँ जी.
Yeah.
Can you play the Brahmananda ji's show us the slide and play the
Okay.
verse,
एवमेतद्यथा तत्त्वम् आत्मानं परमेश्वर द्रष्टुमिच्छामि ते रूपम् ऐश्वरं पुरुषोत्तम.
Anurag?
हे परमेश्वर, आप अपने को जैसा कहते हो यह ठीक ऐसा ही है, परंतु हे पुरुषोत्तम, मैं आपके ईश्वरीय रूप को प्रत्यक्ष देखना चाहता हूँ.
Just hold the slide, Shini. So there is this innate curiosity in Arjuna saying that, while I completely have accepted who you are and, I'm kind of with you, would it be possible for you to reveal your entire Aishwaryam, complete Rupam? Can you show me your divine cosmic form, O Krishna? And this is a very, so Arjuna obviously has now reached a point where he's saying that, look, while I completely accept who you are, is it possible for me to get a glimpse into who you actually are? And then, so Krishna goes on from verse 5 to 8, and he tells him, he says, look, O Partha, you can see my forms. You can see all the hundreds and thousands of various forms that I have, hundreds and various thousands of shapes, hues, colors that are there within me. I'm going to now show you something that, you will see the Adityas, the suns, you will see the Vasus, the lords of wealth, the Rudras, the relievers of sufferings, the Ashwins, the lords of pure desire, the Maruts, those who purify. You can see all these forms and more within me, Arjuna. And you will also see all the movable and the immovable objects that I talked about earlier. Okay? And he says, I am now going to make sure that you are going to be seeing all that you wish to see, because you wish to see these forms of mine. I am going to make sure that you're going to be seeing all these very many different manifestations in these forms of mine, O Arjuna. But, and he tells him, Shini, if you show us verse number 8, please.
न तु मां शक्यसे द्रष्टुम् अनेनैव स्वचक्षुषा दिव्यं ददामि ते चक्षुः पश्य मे योगमैश्वरम्.
परंतु तुम इन्हें अपने प्राकृत नेत्रों के द्वारा मुझे देखने में समर्थ नहीं हो, इसलिए मैं तुम्हें दिव्य चक्षु देता हूं जिससे तुम मेरे ईश्वरीय योग को देखो.
Hold the slide, Shini. So what he is trying to say is that, look, okay, I will show you all of that. I will show you my different forms, my hundreds and thousands of various hues and colors that you're desiring to see, because I've just explained that to you earlier. I've told you that this is who I am. I've explained to you that this is my divine form. This is the kind of form that you'll be able to see. But you will be able to see all the movable objects, all the immovable objects that I talked to you about. If you remember, he says that I am the Himalayas, I am the Marut, I am the Ganges. And therefore he says, I'm going to show you all of this. But how can you see it with your physical eyes? You need to have that divine vision. And here is, I think, a very, very interesting point that the Lord is trying to tell all of us. If you want to see that divine vision, if you want to see that infinite possibility that is there within us, we need to switch on with bhakti, with devotion. We need to train our consciousness inwards. Because if you were to train your consciousness inwards and develop this divine vision of seeing your own greatness, of getting a measure of how much is there within you, and that is something which you can do. And therefore, what Krishna is talking about, this divine vision to see his majestic opulence, is in a way trying to tell us that, look, you can see the divinity within you. But to do that, you need to figure out a way of how are you going to get that ability of yours to the fore. And therefore, he is telling Arjuna here that, look, Arjuna, what I'm going to do is this, that I am going to make sure that I will get you, I will enable your divine vision so that you can actually see this. So here is my point to all of you today. You know, the reason I said, please read this chapter and then come prepared for this chapter is this, that I want you all to spend a minute in trying to see that, look, whatever is this Divya Drishti that we are going to see today, or we're going to experience today with, you know, in Sanjaya's words, in Arjuna's words, in Krishna's own words, I'd like you to, for a minute, switch on that ability to you, because a lot of what they are saying actually is within us. In one way, you can turn around and say, this is the Vishwarupa Darshanam of the Lord. And in another way, you can turn around and say that, look, this is my own divinity. This is my own innate potential. This is my own innate ability. This is what I have within me that I can actually bring to the fore. And that is your Swadharma, ladies and gentlemen, that if you can work on that innate stuff within you to bring it out into the open, to bring it out and to manifest itself, what a great thing it would be. So now here is a very interesting thing. When Krishna tells Arjuna, okay, Arjuna, I will now enable you to see it. Remember, it is Sanjay also who's seeing it, because he's been given this gift of the divine vision by, you know, the sage Vedavyasa to see and to share with Dhritarashtra whatever is happening. So as I said, there are 4 or 5 people who are now privy to this whole thing. One is Arjuna, who's sitting there in the chariot. Second is Sanjaya, who's sitting outside at Kurukshetra, but in the tent. Dhritarashtra, who's also there at Kurukshetra and who's listening to this entire discourse from Sanjaya. Hanuman, of course, who's sitting up there in the flag. So these are the people who are able to see the divine vision of the Lord. Okay. Now, look at what Sanjaya tells us in verse 9 to 14. Now, Sanjay is something different. Now, he is actually describing to Dhritarashtra what he is seeing. And he says that, look, thanks to the divine eyes that I've got, I am seeing something interesting. Now, what Arjuna sees is different from what Sanjaya sees. And here is a very, very interesting point that Sanjaya makes to all of us. Sanjaya is a bhakta. A little later, we will see what Arjuna is seeing. But Sanjaya is a bhakta, and he is actually seeing a wondrous, awesome aspect of the Lord. And he describes this in very, very many interesting ways to us. So, you know, when Arjuna sees the many mouths, the eyes, etc., 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 but what Sanjaya is seeing is completely different. So, Shrini, if you will share with us verse number 11, which is what Sanjaya is saying. And just to give you a contrast, I just want to spend a little time on that. Yeah, Shrini? Yeah.
Divyamalyambaradharam Divyagandhanulepanam Sarvashcharyamayam Devam Anantam Vishvato Mukham.
Alright.
दिव्य माला और वस्त्रों को धारण किए हुए और जिनके ललाट तथा शरीर पर दिव्य चंदन, कुमकुम आदि लगा हुआ है, ऐसे संपूर्ण आश्चर्यमय अनंत रूपों वाले तथा चारों तरफ मुख वाले देव अर्थात अपने दिव्य स्वरूप को भगवान ने दिखाया.
So what is he saying? He's saying that, look, this is the kind of drishti that Arjuna is seeing. This is the kind of drishti that I am seeing. He's seeing the person wearing so many beautiful garlands. And then he goes on to say that, look, if there were 1,000 suns, in verse 12, he picks up and he says, if there was 1,000 suns, none of those, they would pale in comparison to what we are seeing right now. So this is what a person with some devotion will see. This is what a person of bhakti will actually turn around and see. So if we have that faith in ourselves, if we have that, you know, if we are completely tuned into the faith that we have in ourselves, in our ability, then this is what we are going to be seeing. And Sanjay goes on to say something interesting. He says that, look, Arjuna saw the many divisions of the divine God. Okay? But he was also bewildered. He had his hairs on an edge. And while Sanjaya was seeing this aspect, Arjuna was seeing something else. So the whole point is this, that, you know, a little later, Arjuna goes on to describe what he is seeing as compared to what Sanjaya sees. So here is a study in contrast for all of us. That on the one hand, you have somebody like Sanjaya who's saying that, look, I am seeing something which is absolutely awesome. I am seeing something amazing. I'm seeing something that is truly, truly wondrous. I'm seeing the fact that, I'm seeing, all these sweet smelling fragrances. I'm seeing a fantastic darshan of the Lord. And Sanjay goes on to say that, look, but Arjuna, in his conditioning. So you see, if you recall a little earlier, in verse number 8, he says, you will see what you want to see. And this is the point that is very important for all of us. It is we who choose what we want to see. Sanjaya has chosen to see this aspect of Krishna. Arjuna has chosen to see another aspect of Krishna. Arjuna's conditioning, while he's got into a zone of acceptance, there is still a certain lurking aspect of his conditioning that does not allow him to see what Sanjaya is actually seeing. Okay, now this is a very interesting part of this whole thing. So Arjuna actually turns around and he starts describing what he is going to see. So from verse 15 onwards, it is Arjuna who says, he says that, look, you told me about all these manifestations, and he says, look, I am seeing all those manifestations. He says, look, I am seeing Brahma seated in a lotus. I can see the various sages. I can see all the serpents. I can see your many forms. I can see your arms, your hands, your eyes. I see no beginning, no middle, no end. Because Krishna tells him earlier, if you recall, in the last chapter, he says, I have no beginning, I have no middle, I have no end. And he says, I'm looking at all this. I see you with a crown. I see you with a club. I see you with a discus. I see you with all your, with all the various weapons that you have. I can see that. This is what you described to me earlier. And I see you without a beginning. I see your infinite strength. I see your power. I see the sun. I see the moon. I see everything. I see the blazing fire in you, which is all that you described to me in chapter 10. I'm seeing all of that, O Krishna. I see the earth. I see the heaven. I see the space. Everything is filled with you. And then he gets into a very, very interesting part. And he says that I see the entire world is trembling with fear at you. And this is one more aspect of Arjuna's conditioning that is coming through. This entire business that, look, while all this is great, I'm also seeing that the world is trembling with fear. I see the multitude of gods who are entering your mouth. And some of them have bowed down with reverence and they are praising you. I see all the Rudras, I see the Adityas, I see the Vasus, I see the Sadhyas, I see the Vishwadevas, the Ashwinis, the Maruts. I see all of these people entering you. Okay? And seeing your many forms, people are awestruck, and so am I. And therefore, one more part of Arjuna's conditioning is now being exposed to us, seeing that, look, while I'm seeing all these great things about you, but I'm seeing this one aspect also with you, in you. And that is the fact that I am very fearful when I see all this. Because I still have not crossed that line. While I have come a fair distance in my conditioning, there is still that last part of my conditioning that I need to get rid of, which is this fear that I have. Because I'm looking at you with fear. Okay? And therefore, this is something that I'm now seeing within you. Right? We pick up this entire part of Arjuna in verse number 24. Srini.
नभस्पृशं दीप्तमनेकवर्णं व्याप्ताननं दीप्तविशालनेत्रम् दृष्ट्वा हि त्वां प्रव्यथितान्तरात्मा धृतिं न विन्दामि शमं च विष्णो.
Rag.
हे विष्णु, आकाश के साथ स्पर्श किए हुए दैदीप्यमान अनेक रूपों से युक्त तथा विस्तृत मुख और प्रकाशमान विशाल नेत्रों से युक्त आपको देखकर भयभीत हुआ मैं धैर्य और शांति को नहीं प्राप्त हो रहा हूं, अर्थात मन की तृप्ति रूप शांति को नहीं पा रहा हूं.
So look at what he's saying. He says, Krishna, I am fearful. Looking at all this, my heart is trembling with fear. I have lost my courage. I have lost my peace of mind. Can you help me, O Krishna? Okay. This inner self of mine is filled. I'm neither finding courage nor peace of mind. And one last aspect of Arjuna's conditioning is now coming out. And then he goes on to describe something interesting. He says, looking at this, Krishna, it is making me fearful. Please be merciful. And why is he getting that fear? Because as I said, that last vestige of conditioning is still there that needs to be destroyed within it, Arjuna. And he says, and this is what Krishna does. He tells him, he says, I'm seeing all the sons of Dhritarashtra. I am seeing Bhishma, I am seeing Drona, I am seeing Karna. All of them hurtling to their death. I can see them getting stuck in your teeth. I can even see so many warriors from our side hurtling to their death. Okay? And that is a very significant point that he turns around and he says, like the many rivers with water that flow into an ocean, so all these heroes assembled here are rushing to their death into your blazing mouth. I'm getting scared, Krishna, because every one of them, I am not able to comprehend this whole thing. I'm not able to figure out what is happening here. Because Krishna has told him earlier that, look, if you remember in verse 2, in chapter 2, he says, look, don't worry about it. All these people, it is being preordained. So Krishna wants to do that final thing to Arjuna. Will you show us slide verse 31, Shrini?
आख्याहि मे को भवानुग्ररूपः नमोऽस्तु ते देववर प्रसीद ज्ञातुमिच्छामि भवन्तमाद्यम् न हि प्रजानामि तव प्रवृत्तिम्।
मुझे यह बताइए कि उग्र रूप वाले आप कौन हैं? हे देवों में श्रेष्ठ, आपको नमस्कार है। आप प्रसन्न होइए। आदि स्वरूप आपको मैं जानना चाहता हूं, क्योंकि आपकी प्रवृत्ति अर्थात प्रयोजन को मैं नहीं समझ पा रहा हूं।
So this is, as I told you earlier, it is a complete contrast to what Sanjay saw. Where Sanjay saw a wondrous form, a soft, great form, Arjuna is seeing a completely fearful or awe-inspiring form. So this is a very interesting study in contrast. I was just telling Srini a little earlier that from a coaching context, this makes so much of sense for us, that we will have both these types of coaches. It depends, the message is the same, but what are you seeing from what we are telling you? Okay. And Krishna did tell him, see what you want to see, Arjuna. Okay. And therefore, in so many ways, when we are trying to figure out our own inner self, our own inner potential, and we're trying to figure out what we can do with our own selves, we need to be very careful. If you recall in the last chapter, he talks about those 15 different attributes or attitudes that we are all blessed with, which will lead to enabling thoughts. Now we have two options. We can go the Sanjaya way and figure out how are we going to get those enabling thoughts. Or we can go what Arjuna is doing right now and looking at it with fear, saying this is the greatness that you have. So just imagine if you were to sit back quietly and think in that me time that we talked about some time back and say, this is my greatness, this is my inner self, this is my swadharma, this is what I can achieve in my life. Are you then going to encourage thoughts when you are going to see your innate potential? Are you going to get thoughts that are enabling? And those enabling thoughts are going to help you move forward? Or are you going to allow those thoughts to come into your mind that are still going to bind you down to your comfort zone and not allow you to move forward? So these are very interesting. This is a very interesting interplay when Arjuna sees the Vishwarupa Darshana of the Lord. Okay, so fear, lack of confidence, not being focused, being excessively attached to the outcomes of our action, all of these can pull us down and not allow us to move forward which is what Arjuna is also seeing here. So see what he is telling us. Who are you? I bow down to you. Please bestow your mercy on me. Okay? I wish to know who you are because I don't comprehend what you're doing. I don't comprehend you at all in this kind of a situation. Can you please tell me what I need to be doing? And therefore, Krishna from now on, he talks to Arjuna and he says, let me first of all dispel this immediate conditioning issue that you've got, because he just has told him, I can see the sons of Dhritarashtra, I can see Bhishma, I can see Drona, I can see Karna entering into you. And then he gives him a fantastic point. He says, listen, Arjuna, remember one thing. I am Kal. I am time. And I will decide who will perish in this world. It is my call. It has already been preordained. I am going to destroy all of them. Even without you, they will die. Don't think of yourself as the doer. You are just a mere instrument in my plan. Arjuna, understand that. These people's adharma has brought them to this level. So Krishna's message to us is very clear, saying, remove all those fears that you have, remove all that thoughts that you have of the opposition that you may have when you're working on your Swadharma. Remove all of that. You work with your Swadharma and you work towards achieving your Swadharma. Don't try and hold yourself back. And he makes one interesting statement in all of this. Again, when he's showing his Vishwarupa Darshana to Arjuna. Srini, can we pick up verse number 34, please?
द्रोणं च भीष्मं च जयद्रथं च कर्णं तथान्यानपि योधवीरा मया हतां स्वं जहिमा व्यतिष्ठ युध्यस्व जेतादिरणे तपस्ना.
द्रोण, भीष्म, जयद्रथ, कर्ण तथा और भी बहुत से मेरे द्वारा मारे गए वीर योद्धाओं को तुम मारो। भय मत करो, युद्ध करो, तुम युद्ध में शत्रुओं को जीतोगे।
So his point is this to Arjuna, because Arjuna, if you remember, he says, how can I do this? He says, look, it's already done. Now here is a very important lesson to all of us, okay? Whenever we are confronted with problems and issues, okay, and today I think it is fashionable to call them challenges and not problems or issues now, okay? We need to know that there is a solution that exists for each of those. So you will get, each of these, Drona, Bhishma, Jayadratha, Karna, all of these people represent a certain set of challenges that you will find when you're working on your way up. You will find somebody who is revered who will oppose you. You will find somebody who is jealous of you who will oppose you. You will find somebody you down. It is bound to happen. But when you're working on what you want to work on, you must know that there is a solution, that there is enough in your higher self that you will be able to overcome whatever opposition that you're going to face in life. You don't have to hold yourself back. And this is Krishna's very important from from verse 32 to 34, when he talks in this chapter, he tells Arjuna that, look, don't worry, fight, don't give up. Because within you, you have everything that is required to go and achieve what you want to achieve in life, which is your Swadharma. So you must have the faith within you that you will find a solution. So the point is this. Is that the most efficient solution? No. Is it the best solution? Perhaps not. Is it the most cost-effective solution? May not be. But can you start moving into solution land? And these three stanzas, 32, 33, 34, are very important. How do you overcome your fear? By saying that, look, have that faith within yourself that you will achieve what you want to achieve. Don't hold yourself back. Don't let your fear come in your way. Because remember, when you are working on your Swadharma, whatever opposition comes in your way, you will be able to overcome that opposition. Whether the opposition to your plan, whether the opposition to your ideas, whether the opposition to your thoughts come from somebody who's extremely revered, like a Drona or a Bhishma, or somebody who's very jealous, like a Jayadratha, or somebody who's like Karna, who's got a misplaced sense of what is right and what is wrong, don't worry about it. If you were to convince yourself that, look, let me start working on the solutions that I am capable of producing, you will move on your Swadharma and get what you want to get to. And this is Krishna's lesson, his message, that look, you need to fight these enemies in your mind. If you can fight these enemies in your mind, you will be able to overcome it. You have everything. Just trust yourself. Become an instrument in your gut feel, in the fact that you are going to trust yourself and move forward, and you will get what you want to get. Okay. Now here on we see a very interesting play. Okay. So Sanjaya says that, look, hearing, having heard Krishna's command to fight, Arjuna bows down. And in many ways, there's a very interesting message to Dhritarashtra. Because if you recall, the entire Bhagavad Gita starts by Dhritarashtra, out of his own love for his children, saying, tell me what is happening on the battlefield. And in one way, Krishna's message to Dhritarashtra is very clear. That, look, your sons will perish. Bhishma will perish. Drona will perish. Karna will perish in this war. So he's actually sending out a message in very many ways to Dhritarashtra too. That, look, this is preordained, it's over. They are fighting on the path of adharma, and therefore it is not going to ask. And from here on, we get into a very interesting part. Okay, as I said, Arjuna's fear has been addressed, and then we get on to some very interesting stuff, which is Arjuna now starts praising Krishna and offers salutations to him. And this is when his entire thought override is actually complete. And he looks at him and he says, it is appropriate that the whole world bows down to Krishna. It is only appropriate that the whole world bows down to you. And he says that, look, you are the imperishable supreme soul. You are the supreme refuge for everybody. You are the highest of you're the highest abode. And I bow down to all your manifestations. And Arjuna's surrender now to that higher self, to Krishna, is complete. Shrini, will you show us slide number 40, please? Okay.
नमः पुरस्तात् अथ पृष्ठतस्ते नमोऽस्तु ते सर्वत एव सर्व अनन्तवीर्यामितविक्रमस्वम् सर्वं समाप्नोषि ततोऽसि सर्वः।
हे अनंत सामर्थ्य वाले भगवान, आपको आगे से भी नमस्कार हो, पीछे से भी नमस्कार हो। हे सर्वरूप, आपको सब ओर से नमस्कार है। आप अमित विक्रमशाली हैं और आपने सबको समावृत कर रखा है, अतः सब कुछ आप ही हैं।
Right? So he starts praising Krishna, and he says, oh Krishna, it is appropriate that the whole world bows down to you. Okay? And that you are the supreme refuge, you are the highest abode. And I bow to you in all directions. Because you are somebody who has everything but everything within him. And then he goes on to say something very interesting to Krishna. He says, Krishna, I apologize to you. If you remember that very belligerent, I will not fight, you can do what you want kind of Arjuna, to now this Arjuna, who, as I said, his thought override is complete. And he says, in verse number 41 and 42, he says, I apologize to you, Krishna. In my ignorance of your greatness, I may have, very casually used some language. I may have called you, oh Yadava. I may have called you Krishna. I may have called you friend. Please forgive me. Can you, in your greatness, please forgive me, because there is no one greater than you in this universe, Krishna. And this is Arjuna's complete thought override as far as Krishna is, as far as the conditioning challenges that Arjuna is concerned. Okay? And he says, there is nobody who's greater than you. I prostrate before you and bow down to you. I entreat you to forgive me. And again, there's a very, the relationship between Arjuna and Krishna is amazing. Like the relationship between you and your inner self is also an amazing thing. And look at the kind of language that Arjuna uses here. And this is the language that you need to use to your own inner self, to the higher self that is there within you. And he says, Krishna, I may have, ill-treated you. I may not have respected you like we have done sometimes to our own capabilities, to our own greatness. We may have, underplayed it. We may have undervalued it. We may not have been confident about it. And he says, Krishna, can you please forgive me now? Please forgive me. And how? He says, look, can you bring it upon yourself to forgive me like a father forgives a son? Look at that relationship. Okay? However way you treat your father, when you go back to him and you bow down to him and says, please forgive me, obviously the father will forgive you. Like a friend will forgive another friend. A true friend will forgive another friend, irrespective of how badly you treated that friend. Like a lover forgives a beloved. And he said, so in this way, if we have not been able to respect our own inner self, our own inner potential, our own inner capabilities, it is time for us to go within and say, can you please forgive me, my friend? Because you are my best friend. The higher self within you is your best friend. I may not have been able to respect you till now. I may not have been able to bring you out till now. But is it possible for you, in your innate greatness, to kind of forgive me? Because if you can, then we're going forward. Okay? I have seen you and then Arjuna goes on to see that, look, I have seen you in your incomprehensible form, but I'm still filled with fear. Can you please show me that old form of yours? I want to get back to seeing you as you were. Krishna, can you please come back? Because you see, the point is this, that when we actually take a look, there was a research done some time back that showed us that one of the biggest fears that a human being has is the fear of success, not the fear of failure. What happens if I were to do this and if I were to succeed? And therefore, we need to figure this out and say that, look, can I see you as you were before? And Arjuna entreats to Krishna. So Krishna tells him something, that look, I have shown you this form that has never been seen before. It is very difficult. Not by Vedic sacrifices, not by austerities, not by charities can you actually see this. And it reveals one very important secret to Arjuna. And he says, look, I am pleased with you because you are my devotee, because you are my bhakta. And because you're my devotee, I'm going to show you my original form again. I showed this to you because I'm pleased with you. Because I don't be agitated, don't be fearful. With a delightful mind, see me. And I will reassume my old form. And I think the message that Krishna is telling us is this. Have faith in yourself. Believe in yourself. Because if you do have that faith and belief in yourself, then you will be able to see that higher self. Even if that higher self that you have within you at some point of time may be, maybe something that you can't comprehend. It may be something that worries you at some point of time. But you can definitely come back. And Sanjay then tells Dhritarashtra that, what happens now is that Krishna reverts back to his original form. And he reassures Arjuna, saying that you have seen this inconceivable form of mine. You've seen this, huge inner self of yours. Now let me bring you back. And Arjuna goes on to tell Krishna that, look, since I have seen this form of yours, and I'm now seeing you back where you were, I'm completely composed and I'm calm. So there is a beautiful lesson here for all of us in verse number 51. That when you actually get a feeling that this is what you're capable of doing, don't get carried away by that again. Come back to your current form and say that, look, fine, that is what is possible. Now let me start working from where I am to where I want to get to. That's another very important lesson to us. So don't get carried away. If you've got this dream, if you've got this ideal, if you've got this thought that, I'm going to go change the world, it's great. You will. You can. But don't get carried away by that thought and just live in that thought. Don't be fearful of the fact that you can go and do that. But come back to your original form and start working towards that. And therefore, Krishna says that go ahead and see this form of mine, and hopefully you will come back to normalcy. We now move into the final two stanzas of this particular chapter. Adi Shankaracharya, who is one of the greatest people who revived Hinduism in many ways, Adi Shankaracharya actually believes that these two stanzas capture the essence of the Gita. The entire Gita is actually captured into these two stanzas. The first one, when he says that, look, only by complete devotion can you perceive this form of mind. Which means we need to have that devotion on whatever we're doing. And therefore, the 55th and the last verse in this chapter is actually our action plan as to how are we. If you remember, even in chapter number 10, we got an action plan at the end of it, and we are now going to get another action plan saying, how are you going to work, and how do you work in a way that your swadharma, your higher purpose in life, will get realized. Figure this out, okay? So Srini, with your help, we can move into verse number 55. Beautiful verse. Actually, if you can, try and see if you can frame this and keep it somewhere. It's a fantastic verse. Go ahead.
Matkarma krammatvaramaha madbhakta sangha varjitaha niruvaira sarva bhudeshu yasamameti pandava.
हे पांडव, जो पुरुष मेरे लिए ही कर्म करने वाला है और मुझे ही परम लक्ष्य मानता है, जो मेरा भक्त है तथा संग रहित है, जो प्राणी मात्र के प्रति निर्वैर है, वह मुझे प्राप्त होता है.
Okay? Look at the action plan that he has given us at the end of this chapter. Beautiful action plan. Those who perform all their duties for my sake, who depend upon me and are devoted to me, who are free from attachment, and who are without malice towards all, such a devotee will certainly come to me. If you recall, this is the definition of Swadharma that we talked about earlier. That Swadharma is to do what is making you happy, and in the process making the world happy. That is your Swadharma. If you are going to be doing something, and in the process of doing that, if you're going to make the world happy, then you will not have any malice towards anybody. And that is your Swadharma. So he says this very clearly. He says, look, whoever works for me, let's substitute it, works for your own higher self. Okay? Whoever works for me, as with devotion, as the ultimate goal, relies on me and no one else, totally free of any attachments, no enemies. Such a person is dear to me, and such a person will actually come to me. And here is a beautiful action point for all of us, that look, when you're doing anything with single-minded devotion, when you're doing this, then your faith and belief will prosper. And when your faith and belief will prosper, you will achieve what you want to achieve in your life. So the key in this entire thing is that. And this is the final removal of Arjuna's conditioning challenges. It is the final removal of our conditioning challenges. Can we achieve what we want to achieve? Can we do what we want to do? Can we actually become that lighthouse? Can we actually start spreading the greatness that is there within us? Which is what he's exhorting to us, saying that, look, you have all the greatness within you. Can you actually start spreading that light? Can you actually do what you need to be doing? So can you adopt this faith in your ability and believe in your capability to overcome any adversity that can come in your way? Keep this in mind. Adversity will happen. You can't be not having adversity. But when you work on that, you will achieve what you want to achieve. And with this, this very, very important, very crucial chapter of ours, which is chapter number 11, where the Vishwarupa Darshanam of the Lord has been shown to us, shown to you, shown to me, shown to all of us, and how do we achieve what we want to achieve. This is the end of chapter 11. We end this. Om Tat Sat. Now we are open to any observations, any questions, any thoughts that you want to share.
Ram, I have a question over here.
Please.
Yeah, when Lord Krishna is showing the Vishwaroop, and you said only 5 or 6 people could see the Roop. But on the battlefield, there were so many people. There was Duryodhana, there was there was, the whole army, the Kaurava army. So what happened to them at that time?
So that's why he says, no, you cannot see this without having those divine eyes. If you recall, he says that, look, you need the divine eyes to see, and I will give you those divine eyes to see. Okay? So what happens is that at that time, unfortunately, the rest of these people don't get that divine eyes to see the greatness of the Lord Ravish. And he gives those divine eyes at the beginning of the war. Vedavyasa gifts it to Sanjaya, and Arjuna, Krishna gives it to Arjuna at that point of time.
So at that point of time only, Dhritarashtra knows that the war is lost. Is that correct?
Absolutely. That's a subtle message that is sent to Dhritarashtra that, look, everything is over.
Thank you.
It's also a message to Dhritarashtra. If you can call off the war, you have your time now. But whatever will happen to your sons is preordained. Am I right, Ram?
Absolutely. See, there are very many ways in which there is this message that is being sent. But obviously, at that point of time, it is too late for him. And I think in very many ways, this, see, Dhritarashtra was also a very interesting king. Denied the kingdom because he was disabled. And then, forced to fall in line with his son's plans. And therefore, I think this is a message to him also saying, okay, now accept the inevitable as and when it is going to happen. The inevitable is something that you just have to accept. So it is in one way preparing him for the inevitability of what will happen to him 18 days from now, once the war is over.
Ram, may I?
Please go ahead.
Yeah. Ram, absolutely beautiful chapter, but since last few days, I was just thinking, I was hearing that, the mind should always be a slave of your heart. And, whatever mind says, mind will always decide what is right, but heart will always decide what is correct. So now taking this into consideration, when Pandavas asked for maybe, 5 villages before this Mahabharata was, done. So Dhritarashtra refused to give even the 5 villages. And that time, perhaps Dhritarashtra thought from his heart, because emotional attachment with his son. So sometimes, don't you think that, some decisions need to be taken by the mind, and that would have been more correct in the interest of everybody? Ram, I would like to have your views on that.
Wonderful question, Darshan. Thank you very much for that. First of all, just to get a little bit of that context right, it is Duryodhana who says that I will not even give you the point, I will not return it to you. It's not Dhritarashtra, but it is Duryodhana who says that. And it is Duryodhana's arrogance that actually comes in the way. And that's what, if you recall, Krishna was telling you, when you get arrogant, you become ignorant, and you lose your ability, you lose your capability to discriminate, the power of discrimination, as he keeps saying. So it is Duryodhana who says that. If you look at the entire Mahabharata, a very sad thing. Dhritarashtra, everybody advises Dhritarashtra saying that, king, you could stop this, you can do it. Okay. But the point is that he has reached a stage in his life. His conditioning now is so complete that his mind refuses to listen to reason. Okay. And whatever, I mean, there is a very interesting theory out there, Darshan. I mean, you can figure this out. Everybody who talks to Dhritarashtra, whether it is Vidur who tells him that, look, what are you doing, my elder brother? Why are you doing? Vidura was his younger brother, or Drona or Bhishma or whatever it is. They were all telling him that what you're doing is not correct. And they were trying to appeal to his mind, saying, stop this. Okay? If only he had listened to his heart, and his heart would have told him that, look, what you're doing is wrong. Do the right thing. If he would have listened to that, he would have happened. You see, that is what he said. That is what Krishna tells us. No, that what does the mind do? The mind clouds your, brings you into that situation where you get all this. Now, you must understand Dhritarashtra's conditioning also. Though he was elder, because he was disabled, because he was visually impaired, he didn't get the kingdom. And he was extremely jealous of that fact. Number one, that, though I'm elder, why should I be denied my rightful place as the king of this land? Number one. Number two, because of a historical accident, Yudhishthira becomes the Raj. And Dhritarashtra is again jealous of that fact. So all never allowed his heart to come out. And even at the end of the war, there is a beautiful, there is in the Bhagavatam, if you can read it, there is a beautiful moment that Vidura goes and he finally convinces Dhritarashtra, saying, at least now give up, yaar. Come with me to the forest. Enough is enough. Abhi to chhod do. So
Thank you, Ram.
It's a very, very interesting interview. I'm glad that you asked that question.
I have a question, Ram.
Yes, please, go ahead, Raj.
Thanks.
I'm going through this chapter when Krishna gives his Vishwarupam. Arjuna, you said, sees it from one particular point of view because he's got that special Divya Drishti over that he gets. What Sanjay also sees is what he describes. But
Yes.
what they both see, you said, is very, very different. So what happens sometimes in life, you come to some, whether it is work related or it is family related, individuals may look at an issue in two different ways and they both may be correct.
Yes.
So how does one differentiate and decide which is the right one?
So that's what he says. No, Rajiv, I think he says that in verse number 34, 24, when he says that, look, I'm filled with fear, and that's the whole interpretation there. Now, are you going, when you are going to see this manifestation, when you are going to see the higher self, when you are going to see some activity that you want to do, are you going to look at it from a perspective saying that these are thoughts that are going to enable me to move forward on my path? Or are these thoughts that are not going to enable me to move forward on my path? So there are these two kinds of thoughts, no, Rajiv? One is enabling thoughts, and the other is not enabling thoughts.
No, my point is slightly different.
So if Arjuna was looking at it from not enabling thoughts perspective, whereas Sanjay was looking at it as in a completely enabling thought perspective. That's the whole point that we are being driven at. Okay, saying so it is up to you on what is the perspective that you are looking at that particular situation, Rajiv. Correct? So there is a situation that is there either at work or wherever it is, and you are looking at it from your perspective. The only question that you need to ask yourself is this: the perspective that I am looking at this from, is it helping me move forward on my Swadharma? If it is, you're doing fine, Rajiv. Okay? And if there is, that's what he says. No, don't worry about the Bhishma in your life, the Dronas in your life, and whatever, because somebody else has another perspective. Maybe right from their perspective. Okay? Maybe it is that. Maybe it is their Swadharma to look at it from their perspective like that. That's perfectly all right. But just because you're going to be confronted with both these perspectives, you do what you think is the right one for you. That's his lesson to all of us here. That's why he says, go ahead and do this warrior. Don't sit down not doing it. That's his point to us. Okay? So if there is sometimes in life what will happen, Rajiv, is that there will be a clash between two perspectives. I think my perspective is right. You think your perspective is right. That's where you're coming from. This is where I'm coming from. And sometimes if there is no meeting ground, if there's no middle ground between you and me, okay, and it will happen that there is going to be a clash. So that is bound to happen, Rajiv. There's nothing that we can do about it. Okay? It is not my job to question whether the perspective that that person is coming from, is it right, is it wrong, is it correct, is it not correct? That is that person's perspective. What I'm in control of is my perspective. Right? So can I take control of my perspective? Can I work with my thoughts? Can I make sure that they are enabling me to continue on my journey?
Yeah.
That's what. But if it so happens that there is going to be a clash of perspectives, so be it. But you have the confidence that you will do. Now look at Bhishma's Swadharma. He thought his Swadharma is to protect the Hastinapura kingdom at any cost, because he thought this is the promise I've given to my father, that whatever happens to this Hastinapur, I will protect it. Now that is his perspective. Okay? And he is right in his perspective. A Drona's perspective is that, look, when I was nothing in life, I was just a simple Acharya. It was this kingdom that brought me and gave me so much in my life. And whether I'm right or wrong, I still need to stand by these people, because in one very famous statement, he says, "Main inka namak khaya hai." I can't desert them now. That is my Swadharma. Okay? That's why he says, whether it is Bhishma or Drona who's going to come in front of you, don't worry, you proceed, you go ahead with what you want to do in your life. Their perspective is different, which is fine.
Can I ask, Ram?
Please go ahead, Ashish.
Yeah. And now, two things. One thing, can you come again on that? Who gave Divya Chakshu to Sanjay? Number one. And number two, perhaps in the Gita part, it is the last call for Dhritarashtra to call off the war and to come to terms with Pandavas. And I think there is a great lesson from management point of view, that though Krishna was always knowing that this war is going to be, all the Kauravas are going to be killed and they are going to be defeated in this thing, still he does not miss the protocol. To make all the efforts to convince them before the Yuddha or the war really starts. So is it the way?
So there are three things that you asked. Number one, when just before the war starts, Vedavyasa, the sage, the story goes, who is in many ways supposed to be the progenitor of both the Kaurava and the Pandava race. Okay. When he comes and he meets Dhritarashtra, he blesses Sanjay with this vision, saying that, look, I bless you with this vision to faithfully repeat whatever is happening on the war to Dhritarashtra, because he's curious to know what is happening. So that is number one. On this divine vision of, the story also goes that after this is over, and once that divine vision is removed from Arjuna, Arjuna actually, it is said, will forget this. He also goes into a kind of a memory wipe on what he sees. Okay, that's another point. Yes, I mean, this could be another clarion call to Dhritarashtra saying that, look, this is all getting over, my friend. What are you doing? Why don't you stop it even now? But I think by that time it is too late. I don't think he would have been able to recall Duryodhana. Remember also at that point of time, when the Gita was revealed to Arjuna, again from a pure story perspective, the war cry, the war battle was already sounded at that time. So many ways, we are also told that this was like one pause button that was hit in everybody's collective memory at that point of time. And everybody seemed to have been frozen in time at just that. And then the entire Gita was revealed to give him that confidence. And then immediately after the Gita is revealed, okay, everybody kind of comes back into life and the war is fought. That's the story part. But that's aside. I mean, there are very many different interpretations of the story. I think the important thing is to go back into the lessons of the Gita for us from our Swadharma perspective.
Good morning, Ram. Absolutely mesmerizing. And, I could see it in 3 dimensions, what you were explaining. So I want you to, again, say briefly about your perspective on and looking at what you told us about Bhishma, Karna, Drona, all the big guys, about what is truth more powerful than Swadharma. What I mean to ask is that स्वधर्म एक चीज है, मगर सच्चाई की राह में और सच, what is truth, what is the real thing, that has to be achieved. And if these Maharathis didn't speak about it when they had the time, then was that their crime for which they are biting the dust? So I want you to explain this briefly.
Absolutely, Pankaj. You're absolutely right. See? The point is that they didn't stand up on the side of truth. And that is why they were fighting on the side of adharma. Okay? So there is dharma, there is adharma, and there is swadharma. Right? So the point is that they had this mistaken notion of what their swadharma is.
Mistaken notion of what their swadharma is?
Yes, because Bhishma was always under the impression that because I've given this promise to my father that at any cost I will protect this kingdom. And so be it. I mean, he was most unhappy with whatever was happening. All that he should have done all that he could have done at that point. He tried to counsel Dhritarashtra. He knew Duryodhana doesn't listen to him. He tried to counsel Dhritarashtra. But he was insulted by Duryodhana and group of people. And yet, he persisted with that. Okay? Because in many ways, he also realized that Bhishma also is a great, he's what we call an Ichha Jivi. Okay? Which means he is somebody who lived till he wanted to live. Then at some point of time, he kind of decided to move on. And, he realized that this is my time, that my time has come to go. Okay? Likewise, Drona. Okay, these are all people who, you call them Ichha Jivi or Ichha Mrityu or whatever it is, but these are all people who realize that. So they had this, to me, I feel they had that mistaken notion saying that, look, I need to still fight on the side of untruth. I need to still fight on the side of adharma. Though I know it is adharma, though I'm counseling you, even somebody like Kripacharya, who was one of the survivors of the war, okay, who was the royal priest. Okay. All these guys were, they very clearly knew that it's not right. And they still went ahead with that fight. So in the battle between truth and swadharma, Pankaj, there can never be a conflict, quite honestly. Okay? Because when you are saying that this is my swadharma, because, that is what he explains, that look, whatever you are going to be doing, you need to do it in a way that is going to cause universal happiness. Okay, there is a beautiful novel, a beautiful play by Bertolt Brecht. Okay, and this is a German playwright, and he writes about the life of Galileo Galilei. Okay, and if you remember, Galileo, Copernicus was the first guy to say that the world is round. And Copernicus was burnt at the stake by the then establishment because The then establishment kept saying that, there is a heaven above, there is earth middle, and then there is a hell below. And Copernicus was the first guy to say, rubbish, there's nothing of that kind. The world is round, the earth is round, there's nothing above, there's nothing below. Okay, it's just sea. Galileo Galilei was the second guy who actually proved this through scientific experiments that the world is actually round. Okay, and he was asked to recant because it did not fall in line with the establishment, because the establishment still wanted to say to the world that, look, there is a heaven, there is then the earth, and then below us there is Patal Lok, which is the hell. So Galileo was forced to recant. And this, if you ever get a chance to read that, Pankaj, you must read the last chapter of the life of Galileo Galilei by Bertolt Brecht. It's a wonderful lesson in leadership. Okay, many ways ties in with what we've been discussing here about Swadharma. And Andrea, his son-in-law and his principal Shishya, comes and he raves and he rants saying, come on, so what if you died, yeah? What happens? You're just going to die, right? Why did you recant? Why did you do that? But what Galileo actually did was that he wrote all his theories on a piece of paper and handed it over to Andrea, who went away, and then those theories after his death became popular. But Galileo makes a very interesting point to all of us. And this is a point to Bhishma, this is a point to Drona, this is a point to all of us, all our political leaders also. That a time comes when a leader's cry of hurrah will be met with a universal cry of horror. Okay? A time comes when your cry of hurrah will be met with a universal cry of horror. That is the time that you know that what you're pursuing as your Swadharma is not right. Okay? How can what you do that is going to get you happiness make the world unhappy? Then it is not sustainable. It is not scalable. You may get away with it. You may get away with it for a lifetime. Some people do. Okay, we are seeing this all around us, whether it is in the world of business or whether it is in the world of politics, okay, or in the field of arts. We are seeing this happen. But how long will you? It is not sustainable. That's the whole problem. So there is no conflict between truth and Swadharma, quite honestly. Okay, you may want to suppress it for some time because it is not convenient, but you can't do it for a long time. It is not scalable. It's not a sustainable proposition. Keep that in mind. Right. Any other observations? Any other thoughts? Any other questions? Any other?
Ram, I would like to say one thing.
Please.
I think this chapter teaches us to see from different perspectives, like the way Sanjay saw Lord and the way Arjuna saw Lord. So when we are dealing in our daily lives, we always feel that we must look from the other person's point of view also. I think that is also a good learning from this chapter.
Yes, you're right, Ravish. Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Does it also mean that since there can be many perspectives, does it also mean that in every life, every situation, there need to be a mediator, or there need to be a guru? Even a guru needs a guru. Or if a big boss, maybe United States of America or somebody, to mediate or to put everybody on the same table so that perspectives are exchanged.
Absolutely. You see, what is this whole concept of a guru? When you're looking at it, if you remember, there is a very famous shloka, Guru Brahma, Guru Devo Ishvara, Guru Shakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurunve Namah. What are you trying to say? You're saying that, look, I bow with humility to knowledge. And when you're saying, I bow with humility to knowledge, I bow with humility to this. Right? When you're saying, I bow with humility to the superior knowledge and wisdom that somebody has. Right? And therefore, that humility is something which is very, very important and critical in life. Because if you don't have that humility, you're not going to be able to get that knowledge that you want, that wisdom that you want. You know? And if you're not going to get that knowledge and wisdom that you feel that you want, obviously you're not getting what you want.
I just wanted to, sorry?
Please go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to concur with when you said that it was too late. And I was thinking why, because twice questions came where we said it was too late to call off the war. And then, I realized that Krishna had conveyed when he had gone as a doot to ask for 5 villages, they tried to tie up the messenger, and then he had shown them that what he was. So he had shown Duryodhana's court. And so maybe it was too late because he had already conveyed.
But, the point really is that even if you were to call off the war, okay, remember one very important point, right? Supposing, for instance, just hypothetical question. Let's say change of heart, Dhritarashtra calls his sons and says, okay, forget it. Let's not have this war. What are the Pandavas going to get in return? 5 villages, because that was their last offer. So a guy like Duryodhan would pick up the offer from there, no, Pankaj? That look, okay, I'll call off this war. You guys said, you want 5 villages. So here are the 5 villages. Now, from a negotiation perspective, okay, take these 5 villages and go from here. Yeah. Which means, again, you're not really getting what you want to get. That's the whole point.
Ramji, can I ask something?
Please go ahead, Reshma.
What I'm hearing and I'm thinking that basically Bhishma knew that he is with the wrong.
Yes.
Okay. Likewise, all the others also, Dronacharya, they knew that they are with the wrong. So why their perception was so different? Because of that, such a big Mahabharata had to happen. Couldn't they have been with the Pandavas? Automatically Pandavas would have won and there would have been less nash of so many people or so much war and all, no? But why their perception, when they knew it was wrong, still they executed the wrong perception of theirs?
So sometimes what happens to all of us, Reshma, is that, we get into this misplaced sense of what is my dharma. We get into this misplaced sense. And that's the time that we need to ask ourselves this question. That what I'm doing, is it really helping spread smiles all over or not? Unfortunately, I think these people, it became too late in their lives to do so. Okay? Just as a matter of research, this is another subject that has been researched quite well. That Bhishma made a very interesting condition, if you recall. If you go back to the story, he made a very interesting condition. He said that so long as I'm going to fight as the head of the army, Karna will not fight. He didn't allow that to happen, Reshma. And Karna was one particular warrior who could have created a lot of, created, he was a very powerful warrior, mind you.
He was the next best after Arjun.
He could have created a lot of, damage to the Pandava army. Okay? And therefore, Bhishma holds on till almost the 9th day, the war, in the 18-day war. So Karna can't come in till then, right? So just think about it that way. So in one way, he did that. Okay. The other thing is that Duryodhana keeps accusing him during the Mahabharata, during the Kurukshetra war. Okay? He keeps accusing him that you're going soft.
Yes.
When you had the Pandavas in your grip, you are growing soft on them, and you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. They actually go to Bhishma and they convince him. You know, see the deviousness of, you see, once you get into that space of kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsarya, then there is no stopping how devious you can become. So the story again goes that what they tried is that they went and convinced Bhishma, saying, boss, let's go capture Yudhishthira. If we capture Yudhishthira, then we will negotiate with the Pandavas and the Pandavas will give up this whole war. I'm sorry, they convinced Drona, okay, after Bhishma. And Drona actually thinks that, oh my God, there has been a change of heart in these guys. And he falls in line with that plan to go and capture Yudhishthira. Okay? And they can't do it in that whole process. Okay? So what I'm saying is that, yeah, I mean, you know, these guys
So
could have done.
sometimes in life, now this is what happens, that you get entangled with people whom you just cannot leave, but their perceptions are very different, and you get very wrongly entangled with a lot of things like that in like the real life that we are.
You do. And that is the time when you need to ask yourself the simple question. Is what you're doing making you happy? And is whatever are the outcomes of your actions, is it causing happiness all around? Or is there a misplaced sense right now of what you think is the correct thing to do? Because if that is where you're coming from, then I think you need to evaluate that option again in life. Okay? But there are times when we will have this duvidha of a Bhishma or a duvidha of a Drona saying that, look, despite my knowing that this is not the right thing to do, I am not going to be able to do what my heart tells me that I should do. I will still go through with it. Why? Because of whatever reasons the mind is telling me to do. And so that's a learning for us, Reshma. You know, that I would like to do this, but I cannot do it. Okay? Because my mind, for whatever considerations, whatever reasons, this is my brother, this is my sister, this is my son, this is my daughter, this is my father-in-law, this is my mother-in-law, this is my brother-in-law, this is my sister-in-law. And those considerations of the mind will not permit us, to take a stance sometimes in life. That is difficult, that is unpalatable. What to do? Sometimes
Even with our work, with business colleagues, partners, associates, this thing keeps coming in the picture very often, because you didn't, probably when you started something, you didn't anticipate or you didn't want it, but today you're in the midst of it, where it is very difficult because the opposite people's perceptions are very different than what your perception is today. Let's not go in the past, but today. So it's very difficult to come out of a situation like this with the entire world scenario, market scenario, the way everything is moving around. It's so difficult to get out of this whole thing now. It's become like a Chakravyu that you are into.
Yeah. So the only point that the only way forward for us in that situation, Reshma, is to find out how can I now start, now that you have become aware of this whole concept of Swadharma, Reshma. Okay? The way forward, I mean, it doesn't matter where you come from till now, it is important where you're going from here onwards. Now, the learnings from the Gita for us in this context, Reshma, is this. Can you now start minimizing that aspect of your life? How much can you start minimizing? Can you get out of it? May not be. Okay? Sometimes it will take a long time. Sometimes it may be messy. Sometimes it may be problematic. But can you now start consciously minimizing that aspect of your life and start bringing in this aspect of your life? Okay? So that if you can at least move towards this, Reshma, you're doing much better in life. That's, I think, the learning that I get from the Gita. Saying that sometimes I can't help it, I'm stuck. But now can I consciously start minimizing that? Okay? Can I stop doing some of those things that are not really helping me move forward on my journey? I may not be able to bring it down to zero. I may not be able to cut it down completely, but at least let me minimize it and let me start bringing to the fore some of the stuff that is giving me happiness and is enabling my ability to create more happiness in the world. Can I do that? Okay. Sometimes you can't get out of those situations.
Yeah, it's very difficult.
You can't, but that's right. But at least can we stop giving it that much of mind space? Okay. Can we start creating mind space on something which is more positive and enabling in life? Okay. That is an option that we've got, and that's the learnings now, Reshma, from the Gita. Okay. That while you may not be able to completely minimize it, at least can I start restricting the amount of mind space I'm giving to those specific issues? Because the more mind space I give to that issue, Reshma, the more I'm being pulled down in my life. Okay? And therefore, if I don't give it that mind space, okay, I start creating mind space for something which is positive, which is creative, which is enabling. Hopefully, at some point of time, in the future, this new activity that I'm working on will be more important than that other activity which is pulling me down in my life. Okay? And hopefully that way I'll get some perspective.
Thank you, Ram.
Thank you, Ram. Now
Ladies and gentlemen, with your permission, we'll close this session. Tomorrow is another beautiful chapter, chapter number 12, where we will continue to examine the divine manifestations of Krishna. In very many ways, he kind of ties up the learnings of today. He ties up the Vishwarupa Darshana that he showed us today, and he kind of completes the entire journey of Arjuna into understanding our higher self. So we close today. See you tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. Om Tat Sat. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
thank you.